Alexander Bennett stared out the window of his private helicopter as it descended toward the small mountain town of Pinewood Haven. Below him stretched a landscape that made his jaw clench with irritation. Snow-covered roofs glittered in the winter sun, smoke curled from chimneys, and every street corner seemed to sparkle with Christmas lights. It looked like a greeting card come to life, and he despised every inch of it. Christmas had meant nothing to Alexander for the past 15 years. Not since that terrible December night when everything fell apart. Now, at 35, he had built an empire worth billions, constructing shopping centers and commercial complexes across the country. His latest project, the Bennett Mega Plaza, would be his crowning achievement. There was just one problem standing in his way. A small Christmas shop called Holly's Haven, owned by a woman named Isabella Hart. Charlotte Reed, his efficient assistant, sat across from him reviewing documents. She looked up as they landed. "Mr. Bennett, I must remind you that Miss Hart has rejected our offer 6 times. Perhaps we should consider alternative locations." Alexander's gray eyes turned cold. "There are no alternatives, Charlotte. That property sits on the exact center point we need. I didn't become successful by accepting defeat. Prepare the car." The helicopter touched down on the outskirts of town. Within minutes, Alexander was being driven through streets that seemed frozen in time. Children threw snowballs in the town square. Families walked together carrying shopping bags. A giant Christmas tree stood in the center of everything, decorated with thousands of lights that would illuminate the evening sky. Alexander felt his stomach turn. All this cheerfulness felt fake to him, a mask people wore to hide their real feelings. He had learned long ago that happiness was temporary and hope was dangerous. The car stopped in front of Holly's Haven. The shop was a charming 2-story building painted cream and forest green, with large display windows showcasing handcrafted ornaments, wreaths, and decorations. Warm golden light spilled onto the snowy sidewalk. Above the door hung a wooden sign with elegant lettering and a painted holly branch. Alexander stepped out of the car, his expensive black coat and polished shoes making him stand out like a crow among doves. He pushed open the door, and a cheerful bell chimed his arrival. The interior hit him like a wave. Warmth rushed over his cold skin. The air smelled of cinnamon, pine, and hot cocoa. Every surface held Christmas treasures. Handmade stockings hung from wooden beams. Delicate glass ornaments caught the light. A miniature village display covered an entire table, complete with tiny ice skaters and a working train. "Welcome to Holly's Haven. I'll be right with you." The voice came from somewhere in the back. Alexander waited, his hands in his pockets, his expression carefully neutral. He studied the shop with a businessman's eye, calculating square footage and potential value. This building and the 2 adjacent properties would give him exactly what he needed for the plaza entrance. A woman emerged from the back room, carrying a box of ornaments. She set it down on the counter and turned to face him with a bright smile. Alexander felt something unexpected. A pause. A catch in his breath. Isabella Hart was not what he expected. She appeared to be in her late 20s, with long chestnut hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her green eyes sparkled with genuine warmth. She wore a simple red sweater and jeans, with a white apron decorated with embroidered snowflakes. There was nothing fancy about her appearance, yet something about her presence filled the room with light. "How can I help you today? Are you looking for something special?" Isabella asked, her smile never wavering. "I'm looking for Isabella Hart," Alexander said, his voice clipped and professional. The smile faded slightly. Isabella studied him more carefully, taking in his expensive clothes and cold demeanor. Recognition dawned in her eyes. "You must be Alexander Bennett." Her voice cooled several degrees. "I should have known. The suit gave you away." "Miss Hart, I've come personally because my representatives seem unable to convey the seriousness of my offer. I'm prepared to pay you triple the market value for this property and the adjacent lots." With that money, you could open 10 shops anywhere in the country. Isabella crossed her arms, leaning against the counter. Mr. Bennet, I've read your letters. All 15 of them. My answer hasn't changed. This shop isn't for sale. Everything is for sale at the right price, Alexander replied, stepping closer to the counter. This is prime real estate being wasted on seasonal merchandise. My development would bring jobs, economic growth, and modernization to this town. This town doesn't need modernization, Isabella said firmly. We have something your money can't buy. We have community, tradition, and heart. Holly's Haven has been in my family for 3 generations. My grandmother started it. My mother expanded it. Now it's mine to protect. Alexander felt his frustration rising. Sentiment doesn't pay bills. Tradition doesn't create economic opportunity. You're being impractical. And you're being heartless, Isabella shot back, her green eyes flashing. But I suppose that's what it takes to become a billionaire. You have to forget what actually matters. No one spoke to Alexander Bennet like that. No one dared. He felt anger surge through him, but beneath it, something else stirred. Something he hadn't felt in years. Interest. Before he could respond, the door chimed again. A young girl around 10 years old burst in, followed by a woman in her 30s carrying shopping bags. Isabella. Look what Aunt Emma bought me. The girl, Sophia, held up a new winter coat. Emma Thompson, Isabella's best friend since childhood, smiled warmly. Then she noticed Alexander and her smile faded. She moved protectively closer to Isabella. Is everything all right here? Emma asked carefully. Everything's fine, Isabella assured her. Mr. Bennet was just leaving. Weren't you, Mr. Bennet? Alexander looked at the 3 of them. The little girl with her innocent excitement. The protective friend. Isabella with her defiant stance and unwavering conviction. They represented everything he had convinced himself didn't exist anymore. Loyalty. Love. Connection. This conversation isn't over, Miss Hart, Alexander said quietly. I don't give up easily. I'll be staying in Pinewood Haven until you understand that accepting my offer is your best option. Then I hope you like Christmas carols, Isabella replied, her chin lifted. Because you're going to be hearing them for a while. Alexander turned and walked out of the shop, the cheerful bell mocking his exit. Outside, the snow had begun falling again, soft flakes drifting down from a gray sky. Charlotte waited by the car. How did it go, sir? Find me a place to stay, Alexander ordered. We're not leaving until I get what I came for. As the car pulled away, Alexander glanced back at the shop. Through the window, he could see Isabella laughing with Emma and Sophia, decorating a small tree together. Something twisted in his chest. Something uncomfortable and unwelcome. He forced himself to look away. This was business. Nothing more. But even as he thought it, Alexander knew he was lying to himself. Alexander checked into the Pinewood Inn, the only lodging establishment in town. The inn was exactly what he expected, cozy, quaint, and decorated with enough Christmas cheer to make his teeth ache. The owner, a cheerful woman named Grace Williams, greeted him with homemade cookies and questions about his stay. We don't get many businessmen here during the holidays, Grace said, handing him an old-fashioned key. Most of our guests come for the Christmas festival or to visit family. How long will you be staying? As long as necessary, Alexander replied coldly, taking the key and heading upstairs without another word. His room overlooked Main Street, which meant it overlooked Holly's Haven. From his window, he could see the warm lights of the shop, customers coming and going even as evening approached. He watched Isabella through the window, helping a young couple select ornaments, her animated gestures and bright smile visible even from a distance. Charlotte called his phone. Mr. Bennet, the board is concerned about the delay. They're asking when you'll return to finalize the other contracts. Tell them I'm handling a critical acquisition, Alexander said, still watching the shop. Everything else can wait. Over the next few days, Alexander became an unwelcome fixture in Pinewood Haven. He spent his mornings at the local coffee shop, the Morning Brew, working on his laptop and making calls. The shop was directly across from Holly's Haven, giving him a perfect view of Isabella's daily routine. He watched her arrive each morning at 8, always carrying a travel mug and wearing a different festive sweater. He watched Sophia arrive after school to help sort inventory and greet customers. He watched Emma stop by during her lunch breaks from the local bookstore. And he watched Ethan Parker, a handsome local contractor, visit the shop far too often for Alexander's liking. Ethan was everything Alexander wasn't. Friendly, relaxed, beloved by the community. He made Isabella laugh in a way that made Alexander's jaw tighten inexplicably. On the fourth day, Alexander decided to try a different approach. He began talking to other business owners, offering them premium locations in his planned plaza at reduced rates. He met with the mayor, presenting economic projections and job creation estimates. He was systematic, strategic, and persuasive. But Pinewood Haven was different from other towns. The community rallied around Isabella. Business owners politely declined his offers. The mayor expressed concern about losing the town's character. Everywhere Alexander turned, he met with friendly but firm resistance. On the fifth evening, a major snowstorm hit. The roads out of town became impassable. Alexander was trapped. He sat in his room that night, watching the snow fall heavily, burying the town under white. His phone buzzed with messages from Charlotte about missed meetings and frustrated board members. He ignored them all, his attention fixed on Holly's Haven across the street. The shop lights were still on. Through the window, he could see Isabella moving around inside, seemingly unconcerned about the storm. Then the lights in the shop flickered and went out. Power outage. Alexander watched as Isabella emerged from the shop moments later, locking the door. She wore a thick coat and boots, but the wind whipped her hair around her face as she struggled against the storm. She started walking down the street, probably heading home. Without thinking, Alexander grabbed his coat and headed downstairs. By the time he reached the street, Isabella was halfway down the block, leaning into the wind. He caught up to her quickly. "Miss Hart." Isabella turned, surprise evident on her face even in the dim light from emergency lanterns. "Mr. Bennett? What are you doing out in this weather? I saw the power go out." "Where are you going?" "Home. I live about 6 blocks from here." She turned to continue walking. "That's dangerous in this storm. Let me walk with you." Isabella stopped and faced him fully. "Why would you do that? I thought I was just an obstacle to your business plans." "You are," Alexander said bluntly. "But that doesn't mean I want you to freeze to death before you sell me your shop." Despite herself, Isabella laughed. It was a genuine sound that cut through the howling wind. "At least you're honest." "Fine, Mr. Bennett. You can walk me home if it makes you feel better." They walked in silence for a block, fighting against the wind and snow. Then Isabella spoke. "Why do you hate Christmas so much?" Alexander tensed. "What makes you think I hate Christmas?" "It's obvious. Every time you walk past holiday decorations, you look like you're seeing something painful. Every time someone wishes you Merry Christmas, you flinch. I've been watching you too, Mr. Bennett." Alexander was quiet for a long moment. They turned onto a quieter residential street lined with small houses, each one decorated with lights and wreaths. "I lost everything on Christmas Eve 15 years ago," he finally said. "My parents, my younger sister Emily, and my fiancée Elizabeth. Car accident on their way to our family celebration. Black ice on the highway. They were all in the same car. I was running late from work, so I took my own car. I was supposed to be with them. Isabella stopped walking. The snow fell softly around them as she turned to face him, her expression filled with compassion. Alexander, I'm so sorry. It was the first time she had used his first name. It was also the first time he had told anyone the complete truth about that night. After that, Christmas became a reminder of everything I lost. I threw myself into work because work doesn't betray you. Work doesn't leave you. Success became my only goal because at least it was something I could control. But you can't control everything, Isabella said softly. And pushing away joy doesn't protect you from pain. It just means you're always hurting. They stood there in the falling snow, two people from completely different worlds, and Alexander felt something crack inside his carefully constructed walls. Why do you care so much about that shop? He asked. Isabella smiled sadly. My mother died 5 years ago. Cancer. She spent her last Christmas in that shop, teaching me everything she knew. Every ornament, every tradition, every customer who walks through that door carries a piece of her with me. Selling it would be like losing her all over again. Understanding passed between them. Two people holding on to places because letting go meant facing grief. I live here, Isabella said, gesturing to a small blue house with a wraparound porch. Despite the storm, the porch was decorated with evergreen garland and white lights running on battery power. Thank you for walking me home, Alexander. Isabella, he said as she started up the steps. She turned back. I'm sorry about your mother. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. And I'm sorry about your family. But they wouldn't want you to stop living. Elizabeth, Emily, and your parents wouldn't want your heart to stay frozen forever. She went inside, leaving Alexander standing in the snow, her words echoing in his mind. The next morning, the storm had passed, but the roads remained closed. Alexander found himself walking to the morning brew earlier than usual. When he arrived, he saw Isabella already there, sitting at a corner table with Emma and Sophia, the three of them laughing over hot chocolate. Their eyes met across the room. Isabella smiled and, to his surprise, gestured to the empty chair at their table. Alexander hesitated. Then, for the first time in 15 years, he chose connection over isolation. He walked over and sat down. Good morning, Isabella said warmly. Grace makes the best cinnamon rolls in 3 counties. You should try one. And just like that, something shifted. The war between them paused, replaced by something neither of them quite understood yet. Something that felt dangerously like hope. The roads remained closed for 3 more days, and in that time, something remarkable happened. Alexander Bennett began to remember what it felt like to be human. It started small. Joining Isabella, Emma, and Sophia for breakfast became a morning routine. Alexander found himself listening to Sophia's stories about school, laughing at Emma's jokes about difficult customers at her bookstore, and engaging in conversations that had nothing to do with business deals or profit margins. Isabella seemed to sense the change in him. She stopped treating him like an enemy and started treating him like a person who had simply lost his way. On the second day after the storm, Isabella invited him to help at the shop. We have a big order for the town's Christmas festival, she explained. We're behind because of the power outage. If you're going to stay in town anyway, you might as well make yourself useful. Alexander surprised himself by agreeing. He showed up at Holly's Haven wearing jeans and a sweater instead of his usual suit. Charlotte called multiple times, but he sent every call to voicemail. Working alongside Isabella was different from anything Alexander had experienced. She moved through the shop with practiced grace, knowing exactly where everything belonged. She told him stories about the ornaments as they worked. This angel was made by a woman named Evelyn who lost her husband last year, Isabella said, carefully wrapping a delicate porcelain figure. She brings me one every Christmas. She says creating them helps her feel close to him. And this nutcracker? Alexander asked, holding up a hand-painted soldier. That's from a local artist named Abigail. She's 83 years old and has been making these since she was Sophia's age. Each one is unique. See the detail on the uniform? Alexander examined the nutcracker closely. He had never paid attention to such things before. To him, Christmas decorations were just products, commodities to be bought and sold. But Isabella saw stories, connections, and pieces of people's hearts. "You really love this, don't you?" he said, watching her face light up as she talked. "I love what it represents," Isabella replied. "Hope, joy, togetherness. The idea that even in the darkest winter, we can create light. That's what Christmas means to me. It's not about the decorations or the gifts. It's about reminding ourselves that beauty and goodness still exist in the world." Alexander felt something stir in his chest. A warmth he hadn't felt in 15 years. That afternoon, Ethan Parker stopped by the shop. He paused when he saw Alexander helping Isabella arrange a window display. "Well, this is unexpected," Ethan said, his friendly demeanor masking obvious curiosity. "The big city businessman is playing shopkeeper?" "Just helping out," Alexander said carefully. Ethan turned to Isabella. "Isabella, don't forget we have the festival planning meeting tonight at 7. They want to finalize the location for the Christmas Eve celebration." "I'll be there," Isabella promised. After Ethan left, Alexander found himself asking, "Are you and Ethan together?" Isabella looked up, surprised by the question. A small smile played at her lips. "Ethan? No, we're just friends. He's like a brother to me." "Why do you ask?" "No reason," Alexander said quickly, but he couldn't hide the relief in his voice. Isabella studied him for a moment, her green eyes thoughtful. "Alexander Bennett, are you jealous?" "That's ridiculous," he protested, but his ears turned slightly red. Isabella laughed, a sound like bells chiming. "You are. The billionaire businessman is jealous of a small-town contractor." "I'm not," Alexander insisted, but he was smiling despite himself. "I'm simply gathering information about the town's social dynamics." "Sure you are," Isabella teased. Then her expression softened. "For what it's worth, Ethan's been dating a teacher from the next town over for 6 months. He's completely in love with her." The relief that flooded through Alexander was entirely disproportionate to the situation. He realized with startling clarity that somewhere between arguing with Isabella and working beside her, his feelings had shifted from antagonism to something far more dangerous. That evening, Alexander did something he hadn't done in years. He attended a community meeting. The town hall was packed with residents planning the annual Christmas Eve festival. Isabella sat near the front with Emma and the festival committee. Alexander stood in the back, observing. The mayor, a kind woman named Charlotte Hayes, addressed the crowd. "As many of you know, we've received a generous offer from Bennett Enterprises for several properties downtown. While we appreciate Mr. Bennett's interest in our town, we need to consider what kind of development aligns with Pinewood Haven's values and character." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Several people glanced back at Alexander. "I think we should hear what Mr. Bennett has to say," Isabella said suddenly, standing up. "He's been in our town for over a week now. Maybe his perspective has changed." All eyes turned to Alexander. He felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with business. He walked to the front of the room, very aware of Isabella's encouraging gaze. "I came to Pinewood Haven with one goal," Alexander began, his voice steady. "To acquire property for a commercial development. I saw this town as an obstacle, your traditions as outdated, and your resistance as irrational." He paused, looking around the room at the faces watching him. Faces that belonged to real people with real lives and real connections. "I was wrong." A ripple of surprise went through the crowd. "I've spent the last week learning what makes this town special. It's not just the buildings or the location. It's the community. The way you support each other. The way you preserve traditions not because they're profitable, but because they matter. Isabella Hart taught me that some things are worth more than money. He looked directly at Isabella. Her eyes were wide, shining with unshed tears. I'm withdrawing my offer for the properties downtown. Pinewood Haven doesn't need my development. It's already perfect the way it is. The room erupted in applause. People stood, cheering and clapping. Emma hugged Isabella, who stood frozen, staring at Alexander with an expression he couldn't quite read. After the meeting, Alexander found Isabella outside on the town hall steps. Snow was falling again, gentle flakes drifting down from the night sky. The town square Christmas tree glowed behind them, its thousands of lights reflected in the fresh snow. "Why did you do that?" Isabella asked softly. "Because you were right," Alexander said, moving closer. "I was being heartless. I forgot what actually matters. But being here, working with you, seeing how you care about every person who walks into your shop, I remembered something I thought I'd lost forever." "What's that?" "The ability to feel. To hope. To believe that maybe, just maybe, there's still good in the world worth protecting." Isabella smiled, tears now streaming freely down her cheeks. "Alexander Bennett, I think you just found your Christmas spirit." "I think I found something better," he said, reaching up to gently wipe away her tears. "I found you." The space between them disappeared as Alexander leaned down and kissed her. It was soft and tentative at first, then deepened as Isabella wrapped her arms around his neck. Around them, snow fell like a blessing, and somewhere in the distance, church bells began to chime. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless and smiling. "So what happens now?" Isabella asked. "You go back to your life and I stay here with mine?" "Actually, I have a different idea," Alexander said. "What if I stayed? Not just for Christmas, but permanently. I could open a regional office here. Use my resources to help small towns like Pinewood Haven preserve their character while still growing economically. And maybe, if you're willing, I could spend every day learning more about hope and joy and Christmas spirit from the woman who saved me." Isabella's smile could have lit up the entire town. "I think that sounds perfect." Christmas Eve arrived with clear skies and the kind of cold that made the stars shine brilliantly. The town festival was in full swing. The square was packed with people enjoying hot cider, roasted chestnuts, and carolers singing traditional songs. Alexander stood with Isabella in front of Holly's Haven, watching Sophia and other children perform a nativity play. Emma stood beside them with her husband, and even Ethan was there with his girlfriend, a lovely woman named Mia who taught second grade. "Happy?" Isabella asked, slipping her hand into Alexander's. "Happier than I've been in 15 years, he replied honestly. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "Thank you for letting your walls come down," Isabella said. "You know, I think your family would be proud of you. Emily, Elizabeth, and your parents. They'd be glad you found your way back to living." Alexander felt emotion tighten his throat. For the first time since that terrible night, thinking about his lost loved ones didn't bring only pain. It brought gratitude for the time he'd had with them, and hope for the future he was building. "I love you, Isabella Hart," he said, the words coming easily and naturally. "I love you too, Alexander Bennett," she replied, standing on her toes to kiss him. Around them, the town celebrated. Children laughed, families embraced, and somewhere in the distance, someone started singing "Silent Night." The Christmas lights twinkled like earthbound stars, and the smell of pine and cinnamon filled the air. Alexander had come to Pinewood Haven to destroy a piece of Christmas magic. Instead, Christmas magic had destroyed his walls, melted his frozen heart, and given him something he thought he'd never have again. A reason to believe in miracles. A reason to hope. A reason to love. And as the church bells rang out midnight, welcoming Christmas Day, Alexander pulled Isabella close and whispered, "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, my love," she whispered back. In the window of Holly's Haven, a special ornament caught the light. It was a new addition, created just that week by Abigail, the elderly artist. It showed two figures standing together under a starlit sky, their hands intertwined, surrounded by falling snow. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "When the heart is open, miracles happen." And in Pinewood Haven, on that magical Christmas Eve, everyone who saw Alexander and Isabella together knew they were witnessing exactly that. A miracle. The kind that changes everything. The kind that lasts forever.